Sahaja-sthiti. It means abidance in the natural state, abidance as the innate. This is one of the ways in which Sri Bhagavan described self-realization. He says that self-realization is innate. How can it be? It must be because the nature of realization is identical with the being that is the self that is realized, and as such is ever existent, without coming and without going. What comes and goes, appears and disappears, is not innate, is not ourself. Even the state of coming and going comes and goes. The innate is ever existent. It is nirguna, attributeless. For that which is innate is non-objective and cannot be conceived in terms of qualities. What is natural for you? The innate is most eloquently described in silence. Yet, turning inward, some expression can be given of it. What is natural for you? It is natural to be happy. Unhappiness is never natural. We should abide in that which is natural. We should abide as that which is natural. If that which is natural is nirguna, without attributes, then happiness should not be considered as an attribute, as something that comes and goes or belongs or is lost. Rather, the nature of happiness must be one's very being. What is innate? No perception and no conception can be considered innate, for they are objective and they are not always with you. The innate must be ever existent. What is natural for you? Your very being is, of course, natural. What is its nature? What is existence itself? What appears to be known is not innate, but the consciousness that shines so that such knowing is even possible is so. Being is innate. Consciousness is innate. Ananda, happiness, bliss, is innate. These are not qualities or attributes. This is just a means of expressing one indivisible, homogeneous reality. It is wise to identify yourself as the self, the innate. To consider what is not the self to be yourself is delusive. Delusion takes the form of misidentification and, in outward terms, attachment. But an attached state is not natural. A misidentified state is certainly not natural. Delusion itself is not natural. What is natural for you? What is innate, you ever are. What is not so, you never are. Inquire to determine what in truth you are. Who am I? The idea of a separate individuality is a falsely conceived attribute. It is not innate. it is not true. Determine the truth of what you are by inquiring within, non-objectively, who am I? Who or what is it that can abide as the innate? Only the innate can abide as itself. There are not two of you, a true self and a false self, a greater self and a lesser self. There is only one self. So then, the natural state is that in which there is no other I, no other world. Just one indivisible, absolute, unchanging existence. Considering any kind of bondage and its consequent suffering, none of that, not one speck of it, is natural. It is all born out of the stuff of imagination. Understand it to be so. In disidentifying from false definition, know yourself as you are. That which so knows is that which ought to be known. There is only one self.
Thank you, Master. It seemed that the abidance in the natural state that you spoke of would be a matter of knowledge, and certainly not limited to thought. Something that might be in the same direction, or at least begin to be in the right direction, I considered the term bhava, except I realized I didn't know what bhava exactly meant in this kind of context. But perhaps having the bhava of abidance in the natural state would be a good approach.
If bhava be understood as conception or attitude, then although such may be helpful, if it's religious bhava, it is not the same thing as abidance. If bhava be understood as conviction, such as described in Ribhu Gita, such bhava results in the natural state. But what kind of conviction is it? And what is its root? Consider the conviction you have in your own existence. It is unbreakable, and it is continuous. What is its root? It does not come from perception or conception. It does not come from thought or sensation. If the conviction from the source is in the source, it is all right.
The impression came to me some time ago that abidance in one's natural state is effortless, and one actually needs to make an effort to leave one's natural state and be in any kind of misidentification or delusion, or even sustain a particular bhava.
That is so. What is natural requires no effort. In spiritual practice, effort is applied only to undo the previous effort of the ignorance. That accomplished, the effortless remains.
That's such a wondrous question to ask oneself. What is natural? It's really asking one to find out who you are.
We're always doing that here.
Many forms of who am I?
Different ways of coaxing.
The last thing we seem to want to do. When I ask myself the question, what's natural is simply to exist. It goes on without any effort, and any effort can't even interfere with it. There's no way that it's ever altered. And I have a doubtless knowledge of that existence all the time. It's always there.
Is it individualized?
Not at all.
If it is not at all individualized, the question of effort or the absence of such no longer applies. For whom would such qualities or states be?
For the unnatural one.
The unnatural.
In practicing, my practice now is to meditate intensely twice a day, in the morning and then in the afternoon. And most of the time that experience of being in the natural state is there in the morning and then again in the afternoon. Between those, there's some drifting. And it makes me go, well, maybe you should meditate in the middle of it and cut it in half. Which then you go, okay, well, now you got two halves, why don't you cut each of those in half? And then it's like, okay, why is there any drifting at all? Whereas, I mean, that would certainly be a way to
what do you drift?
I drift to what the body's engaged in, what I'm thinking, the tasks of, making a livelihood. That's what they drift to.
What is it that you're referring to as drifting?
Well, drifting would be moving away from that natural state, is what it feels like. It would be some kind of imagined departure from...
If it's natural, how do you move from it?
Well, that prompts the question, am I moving from it? Because your question makes me question my assumption, am I actually moving from it? And
again, what constitutes the drifting? What do you suppose is your identity?
Somebody sitting in front of a computer at a desk, looking at a screen, moving hands around, thinking about what's on the screen.
And why do you consider that to be yourself?
I should be asking myself that.
And that you can ask at any time.
Yeah. Well, then I should be asking myself what I think I am right now. I don't need to wait till the middle of the day. Okay.
Is the body the self? Are you a sitter, a speaker, some kind of performer of action?
Well, when you ask the question, are you the body? What I actually consider the body to be becomes much more nebulous. The thing, it's interesting, I'm not quite sure what I'm actually misidentifying with when I start to look at what it is. It's almost like Friday night when Ribhu was talking about the concept, how small it is, but when I don't look at it, the concept seems to have some solidity.
It is wiser for the inquiry to be carried on subjectively. What the body is may be according to viewpoint. You might view it as inert, as an instrument, as a temple, as a collection of particles, as a thought within the mind, or something that was never actually created. But regardless of the view, are you the body? Whether you think it's inert or sentient, in either case, are you that?
Returning to the question, what's natural, and asking from there. No, the body is not part of that. That's not I.
The body is not your continuous experience, is it?
Now, it's interesting. I started to want to start going, oh, well, what is the body? But you just gave the instruction, don't try to figure out the body as, am I whatever I consider the body to be, whatever that definition might be. So, and when you point out that it's not continuous, then that's pretty clear that I'm not something that's discontinuous like the body. I don't experience the answer to the question, what's natural, as a discontinuous and broken definition of myself. It doesn't feel that way.
Similarly, is your existence an object? The body is an object. Apart from the sensations regarded as it, you have no experience of it. But are you an object? Are you a product of sensations?
No.
Again, similarly, the body is obviously transitory. It most certainly will not last forever. But it is impossible, quite impossible, to even imagine the cessation of your existence. Let alone experience such.
If I attempting to do that now, it just drives further into the existence is what happens. Trying to find a break in it, it becomes more obvious that it's breakless.
In light of this, how can the body and I be equated.
Yeah, the body does not equal existence. It does not. When you pointed out that it's the only thing that I know of the body are perceptions, it becomes very clear that the rest of it is some additional concept about those perceptions, but
the perceptions also are merely conceived. They appear in one state of mind. But do you appear in a state of mind?
No, because if I look at states of mind, they're just made up of a bunch of objects, and I'm never one of the objects in any of the states.
That which knows about the states of mind must be beyond the states of mind. Now, Sahaja-sthiti is not a temporary experience. It is that supreme realization in which there is absolutely one without a second, without the possibility of any alternative whatsoever. There's no going into it and going out of it. What the Maharshi realized, he didn't just dip into twice a day. When that natural state is realized, all doubts are resolved, all misconceptions are obliterated. The entirety of illusion becomes impossible. It is immortal, blissful, true knowledge. It is Brahman.
First of all, thank you for all of this beautiful temple and being here with us week after week. A few days ago I was puzzling over death, and it was disturbing me a little bit, and then it occurred to me that it was just the thought of death that was troubling me. Not the actual dying, but the thought of it. And it occurred to me that those thoughts are the problem.
thought of death is not necessarily problematic. It can even be an inspiration, prompting one to find that which is immortal. If we merely did not think about death, that would not resolve it. But in the light of the thought of death, to turn within and inquire, to find out what dies and what does not, and to know yourself as that which does not die, that is very beneficial.
And that's my goal.
If that is your goal, then you need not be concerned when the thought of death arises. Use it to prompt a deeper and deeper inquiry, to know your eternal real existence. It will not be morbid, it will be blissful. The body dies, but with the death of the body, are you dead? Like that, inquire.
It occurred to me earlier when Jim was talking about self-realization. As we pursue self-realization, we're pursuing something that already is, because it just doesn't land on us. That realization must be inherent to our being. We're basically opening up to what already is.
Referring to sort of the question that Jim asked, when I have some task in the world I have to do which involves thinking, how can I keep that in an objective state? Because thinking seems like it's so subjective that it captures me in that state and I forget then who I really am. So how do I handle that?
What knows the thinking? The knower is truly subjective. The known is objective. Aren't your thoughts, any kind of thought, aren't your thoughts objective? Don't you know about them? Consider thinking merely like an instrument for purposes of this question. You are not the instrument. You are the knower. To define the knower in terms of the known is delusion. What is the knower when he's not defined by the known? The knower is pure consciousness. It is untouched by thought.
So all thinking is objective.
It is not yourself. How could you be a thought? More of something that you're not, thought, doesn't make it any more you.
So it's just an action of the brain and stuff.
Or the brain is just another thought. Leave that aside for now. First determine your identity. Then you can see what the nature of the mind or thought is. First determine your identity and know that your existence of the nature of pure consciousness is not defined or confined by thought. It's not bound by thought. It's not touched by thought. It's not conceived by thought. You are not the thought and you are not the thinker.
So thought is always objective.
If you were a thought, the thought would have to be with you always. If you can exist without a thought, then that thought cannot be you. Even the notion of being a thinker, you're not always thinking, but you do always exist. Cease to regard what is objective as yourself, and it will not bind you.
In considering the natural state, or any spiritual matter, it seems that there's a tendency to just conceptualize it. And even in the attempt to consider it very deeply, still that tendency exists. Although it may be a nice concept, it still tends to stay in the conceptual level nonetheless.
Is there something that is not a concept?
That's certainly what this seems to be pointing towards.
Are you a concept? Is that which prompts you to smile now a concept?
then it's really like not letting up for a moment. Unless it just becomes another concept.
As there's never an opportune moment to be ignorant, to practice true knowledge in the form of inquiry all the time is just sensible. Do you love Bhagavan? Is that merely a concept? You see, you know much that is not a mere concept. Your being is not a concept. Consciousness is not a concept. Happiness is not a concept. Love and devotion are not concepts. In fact, everything that's actually important is not a concept. Now you need not worry that you'll get trapped in a concept. It won't satisfy. You know something already better, deeper. That will goad you for the sake of your own happiness. And only that which transcends every kind of concept will be found to be satisfactory. Is this clear for you?
Yes, thanks. It's very helpful. It's clear what's important.
And that's no mere idea.
When you were speaking with Jim, you asked him something like, "Are you an object?" And I thought, wow. And, I could probably take other questions that you've asked during this. But I can see that when I take myself to be objective, then my inquiry seems like it assumes that same habit of assuming that myself somehow is objective. And that would lead, to some sort of imagination of myself.
What is it that you're referring to as inquiry?
Well, it wouldn't be inquiry in that case, obviously. That would be more imagination.
At least that's calling it as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell it as it, yeah. So the thought of it, or the imagination of inquiry, then would be more imagination. Would probably be a better word.
But the experience of inquiry is always a non-objectified introversion.
Well, that's what I was noticing is every time you ask an aspirant, about the mind, about any doubt, it seems like you're asking it way beyond that framework. So that's what kind of blows my mind. And it's obvious that that vision is unencumbered, right? There's no, in other words, that's, but obviously, you know, like you talked with Jane about bhava, or that conviction. But I was thinking that, I mean, I sort of have a conviction, but it's weak. It's a weak conviction because it seems like there's something deeper, but then it's weakened by attachments.
How can you eliminate attachments?
By questioning the very root of them. Was it all, was the basis of them? What was the basis of them? You know, was that happiness ever, you know, in them themselves? In other words, if I would subtract out the object part, what was the actual goal?
And the belief that that goal, happiness, is natural for you, you're very convinced of. There's nothing weak about that at all. But the attachments are weak. So ignorance is weak.
Yeah, because you start speaking and it seems like, oh yeah, they kind of lose. Yeah, that's true. They lose their foothold, right? Because you start speaking about what's real. Yeah, I can see that.
So interior non-objective knowledge, which is the very nature of inquiry, is inherently strong. And the characteristic of ignorance is it's weak and fractured.
Okay. Yeah, somehow I thought that there was some power to it. And that wouldn't make any sense. Where would the power come from?
If there was any power in it, it came from you.
Going back to your question about how do you eliminate attachment. So that would be what you're just...
To what are you actually attached? What is it that you hope to gain out of any object to which you become attached?
Yeah. It seems like myself, you know, Satchitananda. I mean, that...
But in Satchitananda, there's no attachment whatsoever.
Yeah. So I end up getting ripped off. In other words, it doesn't yield.
With attachment to any object, you desire happiness. It's actually the very nature of your being. Recognizing this, attachment is destroyed. the object can never give you yourself. And yourself has no use for an object.
Seems like it'd be so, because it doesn't seem like it ever says this or that. My consciousness never deviates from, it doesn't become blinded because of desire in any sort of way.
The consciousness is just itself. Desire is born out of ignorance. Ignorance is merely misidentification, starting with the root notion of I. Right where there is absolute, undifferentiated being, an I is imagined. If we inquire who imagines it, the imagination vanishes. That an undifferentiated being, infinite and eternal, is your consciousness. That is also your happiness. It is not something that comes and goes. The nature of the self is birthless and without a creation. There is nothing else for it to associate itself with, nor is there anything else to touch it. So it is supremely non-attached. Where there is only one, how could there be attachment? Where you are the bliss itself, how could there be attachment? If the tendency to objectify a definition for yourself is abandoned, that in itself will suffice. How could you be an object?
That is very interesting. That would be pure inquiry right there. Because it seems like everything I imagine is objective.
So then, to be done with imagination means to be done with the objectifying outlook. When the imagination, which is the objectifying outlook, is abandoned, only pure consciousness remains. That is perfectly full. There is no question of attachment for that. And you are not another one. You are that, and that alone.
सुवर्णाज्जायमानस्य सुवर्णत्वं च शाश्वतं ब्रह्मणोऽज्ञायमानस्य ब्रह्मत्वं च तथा भवेत्.
Whatever is made of gold retains forever the nature of gold. So too, all that is born of Brahman is of the nature of Brahman.
स्वल्पमप्यन्तरं कृत्वा जीवात्मपरमात्मनोः यः सन्तिष्ठति मूढात्मा भयं तस्याभिभाषितम्.
The Veda has declared that the ignorant man who rests content with making the slightest distinction between the individual soul and the Supreme Self is exposed to danger.
यत्र ज्ञानाद् भवेद्द्वैतम् इतरस्तत्र पश्यति आत्मत्वेन यदा सर्वं नेतरस्तत्र चान्वपि.
Where there is duality by virtue of ignorance, one sees all things as distinct from the self. When everything is seen as the self, then there is not even an atom other than the self.
Yasmin sarvani bhutani hyatmattvena vijanataha na vaitasya bhaven moho na cha shoko dvitiyataha.
For him who has realized that all beings are the self, there is neither delusion nor misery, since there is no second.
Ayamatma hi brahmaiva sarvatmakataya sthitaha iti nirdharitam shrutya brihadaranya samsthata.
It has been established in a passage of the Brihadaranyaka that this self is Brahman itself, which is everything.
Anubhutopyayam loko vyavaharakshamopi san asadrupo yadha swapna uttarakshana badhataha.
This world, although it is the object of experience and of phenomenal treatment, is yet unreal like a dream, because it is followed by contradiction when Brahman is realized.
Swapno jagarane likaha swapnepi jagaro nahi dvayameva laye nasti layopi hyubhayornaja.
A dream becomes unreal in the waking state, nor does the waking state exist in dream. Both dream and waking are absent in sleep, and sleep too is absent in dream and in waking.
Trayamevam bhaven midya gunatraya vinirmitam asya drashta gunatito nityo hekashchidatmakaha.
Thus all the three states are unreal, being produced by the three qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas. The eternal is the witness of these three states, beyond the three qualities, the one that is pure consciousness.
Yadvan mriti khada phrantim shukto varajadasthitim tadvad brahmani jivatvam vikshamanena pashyati.
Just as one sees not the separate existence of the pot when he knows that it is clay, or the elusive existence of silver when he knows that it is mother of pearl, so too does one see not the condition of the individual soul when he knows Brahman.
Yatha mriti khado nama kanake kundalabhidam shukto hirajadakyatir jiva shabdastatha pare.
Just as a pot is only a name of clay, an earring of gold, or the elusive silver in mother of pearl, so too is the individual soul a name of the Supreme.
Yadheva vyomni nilatvam yadha niram marusthale purushastvam yadha sthano tadvad vishwam chidatmani.
Like the blueness in the sky, like the mirage in the desert, and like the elusive appearance of a person in a post, so is the universe in Brahman.
Yadhaiva shunye vetalo gandharvanam puram yadha yadhakashe dvichandratvam tadvat satye jagat sthitihi.
Like a ghost in vacant space, like a city of the celestials, and like two moons in the sky, so is the existence of the world in Brahman.
நிதாகன் தன் அனுபவத்தினால் நானே சராச்சர பிரபஞ்சமெல்லாம் ஆனேன் என்றும் நானே சத்திய ஞான அனந்தானந்த பிரம்மம் ஆனேன் என்றும் உரைக்கும் அத்தியாயம்.
ஆசிரிய நினது திருட கருணையாலே அகண்டமதாம் பரபிரம்ம அனுபவத்தை மாசரவே நானுரமாய் மதித்த வண்ணம் மகிழ்வுடனே மயக்கமர மற்றும் சொல்வேன். பாசமுறும் சித்த முதல் உபாதியின்றி பகுப்புற்ற மாயை முதல் உபாதியின்றி ஈச ஜக ஜீவரெனும் இருமையின்றி ஏகமதாம் பரபிரம்ம நானேயானேன். நான் தானே சன்மயமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சின்மயமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நன்மயமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே தன்மயமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிர்மலமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிர்குணமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அத்வைத பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அகண்ட பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே கேவலமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே கம்பீர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பாவனமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பரிசுத்த பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே ஓவலிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே உத்தமமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே யாவலிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அகண்ட பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சத்தியமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சலனமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நித்தியமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிஷ்களமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சுத்தமதாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சுககணமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அத்தமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அகண்ட பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விகாரமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விமலமதாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விசேஷமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே வியாபகமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விநாசமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விபுவதுவாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விவர்த்தமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விசுத்த பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிரமயமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிரவயவ பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிரவரண பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிஷ்கிரிய பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிர்மலமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிச்சலமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிருபமமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நிகரில் பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சிந்தையிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சிற்கணமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே தொந்தமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே துகளற்ற பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பந்தமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பழுதற்ற பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அந்தமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அகண்ட பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே புராதனமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பூரணமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சரதியிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சர்க்கணமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அனமயமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அசங்க பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சனாதனமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சாந்த பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே லட்சியமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே லயமற்ற பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அக்ஷரமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அழிவற்ற பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சித்துருவாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சிதம்பரமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விஸ்தரமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே விதேக பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சங்கமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சதுதியமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பங்கமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே பரசிவமாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே துங்கமதாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே துவைத்தமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே எங்குமுள்ள பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே ஏகபர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே மூலமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே மொழிவற்ற பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே காலமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே கரையற்ற பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே கோலமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே குறையற்ற பிரம்மனானேன். நான் தானே ஞானமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே நனைவிப்பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே தேகமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே தெரிவுருவாம் பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே போகமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே புரைமருவா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே தாகமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே தனிந்த பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சோகமிலா பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே சுத்த பர பிரம்மமானேன். நான் தானே அகிலவதிஷ்டானமானேன். நான் தானே ஆரோபம் அனைத்தும் மானேன். நான் தானே அயன் முதலை மூர்த்தியானேன். நான் தானே அவர் செய்கை அனைத்தும் மானேன். நான் தானே அமரர் நரர் திரிய காணேன். நான் தானே அசல முதல் அனைத்தும் மானேன். நான் தானே அகில சராசரமும் மானேன். நான் தானே அகண்ட பரமானேன் ஐயா. நான் தானே மாயை மகதாதியானேன். நான் தானே மன்னியிடும் ஈசனானேன். நான் தானே அவிதயகமாதியானேன். நான் தானே அநேகவித ஜீவரானேன். நான் தானே தாமதமாம் பகுதியானேன். நான் தானே தயங்கு ஜகமெவையும் மானேன். நான் தானே அறிவுற்றதனைத்தும் மானேன். நான் தானே அகண்ட பரமானேன் ஐயா. நான் தானே அயனானே அறியும் மானேன். நான் தானே அரணானேன் மகேசனானேன். நான் தானே சதாசிவமாமூர்த்தியானேன். நான் தானே சாட்சாத்தாம் சிவனும் மானேன். நான் தானே கருதுமுமாதேவியானேன். நான் தானே கந்த விநாயகரும் மானேன். நான் தானே பரமசிவ கணங்களானேன். நான் தானே பக்தர் குழு அனைத்தும் மானேன்.